Welcome back to Dark Matters. So tonight I'm joined by someone whose work has been quietly shaking the very foundations of YouTube and what we thought we knew about gods, time, and the sky itself. His name is Joshua James, and his channel Orpheus Christos dives deep into the ancient record, petroglyphs, plasma events, forgotten gods, and the recurring patterns that connect them all. His research is layered and, frankly, at times quite mind-bending. So tonight we are giving him the floor. Now, many of you who follow the channel may be familiar with some of the motifs. So we're going to be looking at the squatter man, which is linked to the coronal event, the plasma discharges that our ancestors carved into rock as living memory. So to me, this all ties into the larger cycle, the resets of time itself. This so-called Great Reset isn't new. It's the latest chapter in an ancient rhythm. As Prince warned us, purple rain always falls before a world rebirth. So the Matrix, I feel, is constantly telling us its story through symbols, through pop culture, through the way language itself has become a dead tongue. We live in a realm governed by legal fictions, where even our breath has been claimed by the machine. Neo asked, "Do you really think that's air you're breathing now?" So I think that was Morpheus, actually. I may have got that wrong. And yet, this machine, this cultural machine, gives us trauma, gives us pain, and pain begets memory. So this trauma that keeps us looping in this amnesia. Traumatized people don't look within, they don't meditate, they don't remember, and they don't remember the kingdom is within. And in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man, the awakened pineal, the inner sight is king. So we see their obsession with androgyny mirrored in the ancient icons, the dual-sex gods, the salamander that feeds on the dead and hides underground, symbols of the vampiric current that rules this false matrix. But our ancestors were not blind to it. From Albion to Ireland, maybe even Atlantis itself, they encoded the truth in symbols on cave walls and papyrus in song and stone. So I believe these ancestors are still speaking to us. Their voices echoing through the plasma of time, trying to wake us up, remembering who we are and what we are. So tonight, let's listen. Let's decode the gods, the geometry, and the great lie. Orpheus Christos, welcome to Dark Matters. Thank you for being here.
Well, that might have been the coolest intro ever. And I can tell you've done your research. But I've watched your channel before, and I can tell you've seen some of my videos too. Or if not, the plasma really wants to be known, and everything is fractal. And you've touched on a lot of points that I touch on. So I'm really excited. I'm honored by your intro, and let's rock and roll.
Awesome, thank you. I love your work. I've been following it, and it fits with. It was Stephen JD Beaton. People who watch the channel will know about Stephen and how much I love his work and Neil's. And it's that decoding of that ancient record, isn't it? So we're peeling back the layers, as we say, to reveal these sky events, which we know with the red and the blue, that makes the purple. Again, see Neil's work and the episodes that we did with Neil. So I suppose I've discovered that Albion is Egypt and Egypt is Albion, and all the so-called Greek and biblical myths actually came from here, from my perspective and research. So people like Caroline, one of my dearest friends here, Caroline Knight, has joined us. So we've been on this journey for quite a while, haven't we, my love? And we've spent hours unlocking a lot of these themes together, not less on the phone last night, having a good chuckle about it all, because in the end, all you can do is laugh at it. And I think it's about using our logic, but also kind of feeling it in our bones, our blood memory and our DNA. It's almost like if we can't, what's real anymore, we've got to kind of trust our guts and trust our coding, our own coding. So I've got quite a lot of questions for you, but I know Caroline's got some burning ones as well. But first, so for those who are watching, obviously I kind of went into some of the themes in the intro, but can you give us your bigger view, your bigger picture? If you had to, I know this is ridiculous, but for people who kind of don't know, but what we're going to do here tonight, I think, is connect a lot of dots, or Joshua's going to connect a lot of dots.
Well, we are.
We are. And if you could kind of compress your research into a meme, which I realize is kind of, a big ask, but who are we really? and what's happening here. Where have we been, and what does it mean? I mean, we can see what's going on at the moment, and what does that mean for us now? I think it's so important at this time that we do connect these dots. And that's why we're very honoured to have you on here. So, yeah, how would you kind of introduce yourself, and what conclusion have you come to? What the fuck is going on, Joshua?
Okay, I got you.
You help us.
Okay.
Help us.
All right. So if I had to sum it up as quick as I could so basically in 2020, I realized one big lie, and it doesn't matter which one, but then I just started researching like an autist and like a madman and like ADD, like I was obsessed. And I'm pretty smart, not to toot my own horn, but I've got like a Mensa level genius IQ, and I had a lot. I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, and I didn't have. I do have a full-time job, but at the time I didn't. So I've researched this for 5 years, like so intensely, and through that, basically, this is a conclusion I've come to: is that based on Anthony Peratt's research, he was a plasma physicist at Los Alamos in New Mexico, got top secret government lab underground, working with $30 million plasma physics machines, right? And when in plasma, people need to understand what plasma is. It's the fourth state of matter. So, but it's more than that. So if you think like water, it can be liquid, but frozen, it can be ice, and then evaporated, it's steam. Those are the three states of matter. And every gas goes through those different phases, right? It all starts as gas. And but it can be liquid, solid, or when it's ionized, they say, and we can debate what that means, but when it gets electrically excited or it starts emitting light, that's called plasma. And there's basically, through his research, and I think what he was doing, it doesn't come right out and say this in the papers that I've read, but I think he was mimicking the Earth's magnetic field to try to weaponize plasma. And in the process, he discovered these patterns. And the most common trope is that squatting man, the squatter man. And I'm sure you'll throw an image up for your viewers. But basically, he was talking with a friend about this. And the friend's name, I think, was David Talbot. Yeah. And David was like, hey, I've seen that image. And Anthony Press, like, no way. This is, top secret $30 million machinery underground. There's no way, this, you can't even get close to this stuff. And we have to take like, the images are like microscopic and radiographic because the energy is so intense. Right. But what basically what David Talbot said is, yeah, no, I've seen them, and it's all over rocks. It's all over petroglyphs, all over the world. And when he brought the sheer number of these petroglyphs that match this exact squatting man shape, even with the little two dots on the side that you see a lot of times on it, it sparked this journey of Anthony Peratt to go document all of these. And him and a guy named John McGovern went and documented like latitudinally, right, and perspective where all these were. And they recreated through a supercomputer over hundreds of sites with thousands and thousands and thousands of petroglyphs, 80 different categories where the plasma discharge patterns matched. So when a gas gets ionized in our sky and goes through, becomes plasma, and then it starts interacting with our magnetic field, which is a bar magnet, like a spider, like grandmother spider, or a menorah, if you want to see the top half. Depends on how many branches are up there. But we basically like Paul Simon, The Sounds of Silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, right? It's encoded in so many songs. So they basically saw a neon idol or god or whatever you want to call it in the sky that looked like a man, and it was hurling out electric discharges, and that's where Thor and Zeus come from. And based on these 80 categories of discharge that plasma does when it goes through these instability processes, these dicatron instabilities, these toroidal shapes, Birkeland currents, pinches along the z-axis, which cause the filaments to warp and the donuts and the toroids to do different things. It sparked when I put that together, it blew my mind. And I was like, this guy's got it. He's got it figured out, right? They saw something in the sky. It was an aurora borealis. That's plasma, right? Lightning is plasma. Neon signs are plasma. Lightning, is plasma. And so they saw this event in the sky, and scratched it on rocks. And, just like now, we have people in the Amazon still who are, in Indonesia who are basically uncontacted tribes. And, there may have been, just like there are now, different advancements of different civilizations, but, some were blown away and just scribbled this stuff on rocks and etched it into rocks. And so once I found that out, that sparked this like fire in me, because it just, I'm obsessed with it. I didn't choose it, it chose me. And I went down the path of like figuring out who else has been connecting these dots and where else does it go besides petroglyphs. And then I started like connecting it to different religious iconography. And that's what we're going to talk about and where all that went. So I hope that kind of summed it up a little bit. And I do want to acknowledge some other people in this, like David Talbot and Anthony Peratt, are like two, and John McGovern. Like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I'm just elaborating on their work. So all credit to them. And then other people that I've stumbled along that have kind of put this together. There's a guy named Jay Dreamers on YouTube that does great work about this. Shout out to his channel. There's a great channel called Library the Untold. He actually gave me a shout out. So shout out to Joey. I love his work. And, some pioneers like Hans Alfvén, who was a pioneer in plasma physics. And I don't want to leave anybody super important out, because I really am standing on the shoulders of giants. There's a guy named Bill, I'll have to find his name, Bill Petrie, and he's sending me free books that he just wrote because he saw my presentation of his work and reached out to me via email. So Bill Petrie. Wow. And I'll stop there. If I think of anybody else, I'll throw them in later. But I hope that answers your question. We can use that as a springboard. So basically, something excited the gases in our sky, because the sky is not empty. It's air is gas, and gas is fluid, right? And water is fluid. It's not liquid, but it's fluid, right? And when that air got electrified and started glowing like a neon sign, and adhering to the laws of magnetohydrodynamics, which is how a magnetic fluid will react to a magnetic field, it formed these neon signs in the sky. And all of the stuff about the gods are basically about planets and this event. And it was a neon sign in the sky shooting out like Thor, like Zeus. Okay, now we can go from there.
Caroline, you look eager. Well, I'll just say, obviously, there's this global pattern of it, isn't there, Joshua? And obviously, you hit people with a lot of science there, because even I was going,
well, people can watch that as slow as they need to, or pause it or rewind it, but like that's it. You know what I mean? I can go slower and speak in layman's terms later, and I can but yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, the thing is as well, in simple terms, this same figure is appearing, the squatter man, which we will have put up by now, because I will put the images up, because it is such a visual tool. You kind of need to see it, because the symbol itself is the key, right? So this squatty man, or this stick man, like you say, carved into rocks and myth alike, as they say, represents this sky plasma discharge, which has been seen basically, hasn't it, by many cultures. And obviously, I've got my notes here, and it's from watching your videos, etc. So bear with me. But so you've got this, we've got these catastrophic events, haven't we? And obviously, me and Caroline have spoke about this idea of these resets. Obviously, I link these resets to time, but we know that they know something's. And when we say they, who are they? Who are they, Carly? But let's call them the parasitical elite. Let's call them these, kings of the Anu, whoever the heck they are. This hybrid line or whatever.
Parasites. Parasites is great. Don't even call them elites. Don't honor them with that title. Parasites.
And I believe, as the Jam said, and again, see videos with Neil, the Justified and Ancients of Moo, going underground. They are building, and that's why we have these leftover underground cities. I think they know when these events are happening. They put this world on as a stage and a theatre to distract us all. And they know what's coming. They go underground. The rest of us all kind of recycle back if we've not kind of woke up to the nature of who we exactly are. And like you said, before these events perhaps occur, there are these luminous patterns in the sky, which then, to our ancestors, look like serpents, wings, crowns, tridents, and then later they're mythologized as gods. So, I mean, I suppose one of my questions would be, what would you agree with that? What, you know, in simple terms, what the fuck's going on there? My theory is that they transform, you know, kind of, they know how to put their consciousness into different avatars, and they become the overlords of time. They go underground, the whole thing begins. What do you think to that? What do you think to them apples?
Well, it made me think of that Led Zeppelin song. What is it? Immigrant song. We come from the land of the ice and snow, where the midnight springs and the hot springs blow. The hammer of the gods.
Oh, right.
We are your overlord. Yeah.
Right, yeah, of course, yeah. And I think, you know, and of course I follow you on Facebook, and a lot of, like I said in the intro, a lot of our pop culture, you know, from Prince to Led Zeppelin to
Yeah.
many different artists, like you say, the Sound of Silence and the People Proud and Paid to the Neon that they made. This thing is fucking telling us what it is all the time. You know, it's like that thing, isn't it? You know, once you learn the language of symbolism, then things, you know, like Manly P. Hall said, then things, reveal themselves as they truly are, I suppose.
And some people gatekeep those symbols, and I don't gatekeep anything. I'm going to tell you all of it, and I'm going to tell you my sources. And I want to honor your last question a little bit more. So you're asking, like, what's going on, right? Well, I want to point out two things. You mentioned the word catastrophe. So I'm into etymology, and right there it's cat, astro, astral, star. Now, you may think that's a coincidence, but then look at the word disaster. Aster, Astaroth, Astral, Astarte, Easter, right? It's all connected, and they're talking about above, and you know, it's a star or a comet or something in the sky, right? Something that reminds them of a star when they encode it in the words that talk about, you know, destruction. So, but as far as on the bigger stage, when you're talking about them going underground, 100%. And I think that might be part of the reason why all the ancient megaliths are aligned to, you know, the solstices and things like that. And when they get off and when they notice these changes, it's like, the sun didn't shine on this one specific spot on the solstice this year, so we better get underground. And I think that they take all their technology with them. And like the electromagnetic secrets, they really guard the secrets of magnetism, and maybe we can talk about that later. But electricity and magnetism are kind of one thing. It's kind of like electromagnetism. You can't have one without the other. It's like wherever Mary Magdalene goes, wherever Mary magnetism goes, the lamb or lamp, the white hot glow of Emmanuel, God is with you, electricity. And I'm in you, L, right? God is with us, is Emmanuel. And he was supposed to be the savior, right? And I'm not biblical. I tie everything together and I take what resonates, right? But I will drop some Bible quotes, but I'm not like a thumper, but when it fits, right? And there's Revelation that talks about this. But these people, it even says in the Bible, it says like they will try to find shelter under rocks. The elite will try to find shelter under rocks, right? And hide themselves from, you know, God's judgment under the mountains and stuff like that. And, you know, you said it, you know, like Musk and all them, they're building bunkers. And they know 100%. And I think that potentially that living for a long time underground without natural sunlight could cause changes, because a lot of the reason our skin color is what it is based on the level of melanin we have, and the level of melanin we have is partially dictated over adaptation to the sun, the region that we're in. That's why people around the equator right now, right around the equator, all have the most dark melanated skin, and the Norse people from the north or the center, actually, if you're on my level, we'll talk about that later, are the fairest skinned people, right? Because you need protection from UV radiation, but if you have too much, then it blocks your ability to absorb vitamin D, which is actually a hormone that you get from the sun for the most part. But it can be obtained from like fish, and like the Eskimos are like outlier on this because they're a recent migration, and their skin does need to be a little bit darker to protect from the snow reflection, but they also get a lot of vitamin D from their diet with fish. So when this can link into like grays, and are they trying to say it comes from above, but really they come from below, and like Schmeagol and Gollum, and it ties into a lot of stuff. But I really do believe they hide underground, hide all these secrets. They know it's coming, and when they come back up, there may also be a benevolent group or innocent survivors that manage to survive. But I think there are like either two competing groups or one group that goes around and maybe initially is benevolent and reintroduces agriculture and astronomy and math and geometry and the sacred sciences, and that's why it's similar all over the world. But then eventually, either there's two factions and the evil one, is winning right now, or it just absolute power corrupts over time, and they descended like spiritually and became more materialistic, and instead of like benevolent teachers, they become pharaohs and czars and tsars and caesars and kaisers and khazars and caesars and kings and khans and stuff like that. And as far as what do they want it to happen sooner, or can they bring it on? Do they have any part in hastening it? Do they want to hasten it? Do they just like rubbing it in our face? I've thought about that a lot. And I think my current viewpoint is split between two possibilities right now. One is that basically a big part of me thinks that as I look into comparative mythology with the Hindu stuff, with the Yuga cycle, as I look into the Greek stuff with the Golden Age, as I look into the ancient tales of like the Saturnian epoch, where it was like a golden age and everything was green and there was no suffering and everybody lived longer. It could be that in those times, it's just the air is different. There's more oxygen. Things are more charged. It's a different part of our cycle where the electromagnetism is kind of reversed and things are just more charged. And these elect, these elite, these Elohim, put themselves in charge. They are the electromagnetic, emperors, emperors, and maybe, like the Hopi say, that it's kind of like we're in this like feedback loop where when the world gets so wicked, it gets kind of destroyed, right? And that's like the Kali Yuga, which is cool. Why your name's Kali spell, right? And that doesn't go past me. And Kali can look just like the squatter man with the multiple hands, right? It's just like the menorah. And grandmother spider, it's the same thing. And but could the parasites really just want to get themselves back to the better times? And they know this is a feedback loop, and that basically when it comes down to like harvesting loosh, are they just trying to make this world as negative as possible and breed as much hate and discontent and division as possible to hasten this event, because it is some kind of like feedback loop with God or nature or reality, and it is some kind of like parasite cleanse or something? But also the byproduct of that is going back to this different age and this different environment and these different conditions in our environment. And part of that, I think about like the Hopi tales and the theory of the sodium vapor canopy, where like the oceans boil and like a lot of the salt gets stuck in the air, and there's just like purple and yellow glow in our sky, like and that ties in to the purple, like dawning of the purple sage, things like that people talk about. And so yeah, that I just wanted to kind of throw all that in there to honor your question about what do you think's going on. So that's kind of where I'm currently with it, if that sums it up.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Caroline.
Yeah, I mean, you've said a lot of things there that I've come across and looked into in my time as well. And these dots do just seem to keep joining themselves over and over again, especially the one you said about these creatures coming from inside the earth. That made me think of this book. I don't know if you've seen this book before, Secret of the Ages, UFOs from Inside the Earth, basically, which kind of implies the hollow earth.
Yeah.
With the black hole sun, etc.
Uh-huh.
And I know that there's a link between the auroras and the black hole sun, or I mean, we think there's a link between these two things. So the questions I had, actually, I wanted to ask you what you think the black hole sun is about, whether you think it even does exist at all, and how is that related to the plasma event and the auroras?
Ooh, great question. Okay. So I don't want to forget about this part. So you're talking about like hollow earth. So the way I see it is and I put this model that I drew on one of my YouTube vids. I posted like 6 days ago and I got like 10,000 views. And I was hesitant to post it because I thought like it's just my drawing and people might think I'm schizo or whatever, but I posted it and it's like people love it. And there's so many comments about my model. So I'm not trying to brag. Everything that I've come up with was based on me elaborating on other people's theories and converting some of their models. So I'm not. Anyway, I think it's like an eyeball almost, or like a cosmic egg, or like a snow globe, or like a torus field. There's all these different ways you can imagine it. But basically, I would like to, or a skull even, like Sheol looks like the Grateful Dead logo. If you look at the descriptions of the Hebrew Sheol, it looks like the Grateful Dead skull logo, steal your face, they call it. And in that logo, there's a lightning bolt going down the center and red on one side and blue on the other, the polarized, right? And then the upper sky hydrogen ionizes as red, and the lower nitrogen and oxygen ionizes as blue. When they meet in the middle, it's purple rain, purple haze, right? Didn't know if it was up or down. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. Woke up this morning, thought it was Judgment Day. There were people running from their destruction, but I didn't even care. And then in the song Purple Rain, that's 1999, but he references Purple Rain in 1999. And then in Purple Rain at the end, he's like, raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. I wish I would have gone to this concert so I could have stuck my hand up in the air like, I know what you're talking about.
There's a bit of nerds at the front.
Everybody's like, yeah, raise your hand. Just because like, oh yeah, I'm going to raise my hand. Nah, you don't know. You don't know. Let me tell you the score, right? So anyway, there's a lot more of that purple stuff. Purple's the color of royalty. Purple rain, like RAIN or REIGN, right? But so let's call it a cosmic egg, right? And in the very middle of that egg is a flat kind of ish plane. And there's of course hills and mountains, so I think flat is an insult, right? If anybody accuses me of being a flat earther, I laugh at them like, no, it's not that simple, right? And so below is basically covered in. So this event melts mountains like wax, okay? And it's mega lightning, and just like when lightning currently hits a beach, it'll pull up the sand and solidify that sand into glass, and it's called a fulgurite. Now imagine that like 1,000,000 times stronger, because plasma physics is scalable. And then think about mountains having the pattern from above of Lichtenberg discharge. It's the exact same pattern that electricity makes when it discharges. It's called the Lichtenberg pattern. And when you look at mountains from above, that's the pattern they have, okay? So what I'm kind of saying is that when this event happens, it melts mountains like wax. It creates new mountains. It creates new rivers and seas and channels and everything. May boil the oceans and evaporate some of them. There's stuff on the bottom of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like they didn't scuba dive to go build that stuff. The water wasn't there at one point. So we're basically almost everywhere I look, I see intelligent structure deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, whether it's brick or megalith, and whether it's heat damaged or vitrified or underground, these pockets of preservation from this melt, they call them caves or mines, right? And then they come along later and stake a claim and call it mine, and then they use miners, children, to do the mining at first with the gratuitous builders, I call them, so my vids don't get censored, the free ones, the gratuitous builders. And so then nobody's the wiser about the fact that there's these remnants of pockets of preservation of melted buildings called caves and mines underneath us, basically covered in their own melt and mud flood, right? Because when the vapor canopy crashes, what happens, right? There's vapor in the air, right? It's going to cause a flood. And so I think the two events are connected and they're cyclical, the flood and the fire, just like the Hopi say. And so everything's arranged by relative density, with the most dense things at the bottom and unless they encounter a barrier that they can't get through. Solids behave different than liquids or fluids, right? But above us is fluid, right? It's all gas. There's nothing solid hanging in that gas, really, unless it's less dense than the layer it's in. If you think about like a glass, and you put a bunch of different liquids in it, and you put like a rock and a ping pong ball, the ping pong ball will float, the rock will sink, and then the liquids, if they don't mix, they'll arrange themselves by relative density, with the most dense at the bottom. And that's why hydrogen is the least dense. And when they talk about like, oh, the airships flew because hydrogen's lighter than air, no, it has nothing to do with weight, nothing whatsoever. It's the density of the air, right? The gas. So if you put a bunch of hydrogen inside of anything, even if it's really heavy, it doesn't make it lighter. You're adding gas to this metal airship. It's not going to make it lighter in weight, right? It's just going to make the entire contained thing less dense than the air it is in. So it will cause a imbalance with fluid dynamics or air pressure, and the result is it will arrange itself in it will seek a state of rest, basically. And my words may not be perfect, my terminology, but I think you get the concept. So it's arranged by relative density, kind of like a cosmic egg, and there's like a flat plane in the middle, and underneath this is the Sheol, or the underworld, or Tartarus, or Niflheim. There's a million names for it, but it's all the same thing, right? And I think that the reason that it's tied to the gods, and they're talking about the underworld and stuff, is because of the ecliptic plane and the way that we see the stars above us. There's some stars and some things that we never really see because they're below the ecliptic. But when you're talking about hollow Earth, I just wanted to like make my point clear from my perspective. Like, that's how I see hollow Earth, like the bottom half of that cosmic egg is covered in its own melting flood, and there's still pockets of preservation down there. And there are societies. This is where like Agartha, and then check this out. This is really important. Shambhala, and and then there's the Aztec or Mayan or somewhere in Central America, Mesoamerica. It's Xibalba. It's like Xiabalba, Xibalba, and it sounds just like Shambhala, Xibalba, Shambhala. Because the thing that most people don't get is how important etymology is. So as you start to understand how things got changed through transliteration and like phonetic drift, like people have to understand, like an alien to an Asian is an Aryan. Aryans are Aryan. Aliens are Aryans, right? And like to Hispanic people, and I'm not trying to stereotype anybody. This isn't to make fun of anybody. I'm just illustrative purposes, right? Like Hispanic people, Bianca. You can't tell. When they say my name, it sounds like Yahshua, but it's Joshua. And Germans, right? Like Volkswagen, they don't say their W's. And if you really start to study like how things get mixed up between the F's, the S's, the V's, the U's, the J's, the G's, you start to learn a lot. The H's, there's certain letters that are very important that if you just start substituting them, and you also realize that a lot of ancient languages didn't have vowels. Vowels were added later to force pronunciation. So when you take vowels out and start looking at words like how they sound instead of what letters are there, it reveals a lot of secrets that if you try to look it up like etymologically to like make a connection, they might try to like gaslight you at first. But since I brought up gaslight, right, this event in our sky is really like gaslight, and they're gaslighting us about the gaslight event, right?
The gaslight was about the gaslight.
Meta is that, right? So that's kind of how I feel about the underworld or hollow Earth or whatever. But to get to your question with the black hole sun now, and I'm sorry if I'm ever too long-winded, you just got to tell me to shut up.
No.
I do think that there is some kind of energy deep below that, and because they talk about these glowing lights that fill these, caves that these ancient ones inhabit below that have this wisdom and still actually live there. And some people meet them and stuff. And do I know exactly what it is? I don't. I have no idea. But if we imagine the North Pole like the center, right? The center of the magnetic field, in ancient maps and in ancient cosmology, they would call it Rupus nigra, which is the black rock, which is interesting because BlackRock is like the investment company that we'll get into that later probably. But that's Rupus nigra. It's on old maps. It's a magnetic mountain. It's like 33 French miles in circumference. It's on like respected maps that were made by like cartographers paid by royalty. Like they weren't effing around. I think they were recharting this realm after this cataclysm for future conquest, and they had just figured out that you can navigate based on magnets, right? Because prior to that, all the maps are T maps, and all the east is up, the east is north on the maps because they had to orient themselves. Where's the Orient? The Orientals in the east, right? Where's the sunrise? In the east. So they're making all their maps with their Orient as the east, as the rising sun. And then they, after the cataclysm, when other people came out or the knowledge got rediscovered, then they went around charting all the Aboriginal tribes that survived in their own little pockets, based on magnetism instead of the sun being the Orient, the fixed point, the governing center. And it's also called Mount Meru or Mount Sumeru, actually, which is like Sumerians. I kind of connect it to that. Some Aryans, just some Aryans, And Aryan never meant white; it meant like noble and Iranian. But I'm with you. I think the origins are more close to the magnetic center. And the reason why, and I don't have to, you talked about Egypt being here. I hear a lot about Egypt being in America. I don't have a horse in that game, but what I will say is I think the further towards the center you get, especially something about the finish, because that's like the finish line, right? The checkered flag, the black and white gratuitous builder symbol. They're also the Venetians and the Phoenicians, the phony Finnish Venetian Phoenicians, right? And there's something about that. And the closer you get to that center, where on old maps, there's like 4 lands divided by a river that, separates it in 4, and one's labeled like a land of pygmies. But if you'd imagine below that black rock, which may be like some sort of plasma volcano or something, there's this energy source, this whatever it is, black hole sun. And maybe it's responsible for what we would call the sun and the moon. Maybe there's some kind of like plasmatic manifestations or reflections of that black hole sun. And, just like in the song, Black Hole Sun, won't you come wash away the rain, REIGN, right? The time is gone for honest men, sometimes far too long for snakes, right? I think it's almost midnight. I'm like ready. But maybe this event is governed by a feedback loop based on how negative we get. And I think that the black hole sun is involved, and somehow it supercharges or is responsible for what most people would call electromagnetic pulses or solar flares. And maybe just from overcharging, it can also ionize the gas in our sky and cause things like ball lightning and all these different things like ELFs, the extremely low frequency, high upper atmosphere discharges, ELF sprites, blue jets. There's also ones called ghosts and trolls, which is kind of cool. And so, and it's interesting in the black hole sun video towards the end, there's a menorah. And this, they're all wide-eyed in the video. And shout out to J Dreamers, because when things heat up around here, and it's going to get real hot real soon, I think, relatively speaking, it could cause like the gas in our sky to combine in ways that it doesn't normally. It could like morph stuff and cause like nitrogen and oxygen to kind of like fuse and cause pockets of nitrous oxide. So people could be like breathing nitrous oxide, and that's why you see in a lot of these apocalyptic event videos, like pop culture stuff, they're all have these wide smiles, like these Joker smiles, even though it's like terror in the sky and everything's being sucked up and burnt, and they're all just like
something to look forward to then, isn't it, really?
So yeah, that's how I feel about the black hole sun. Do I know anything more about that other than it involves electromagnetism and plasma, in my opinion? Not really. Have I thought about maybe like once all your soul's chances are up and you sink so low from materialism and bullshit that eventually your soul is burned forever to fuel the source of life for the rest of us? And that's your eternal damnation? Maybe. I don't know. Just something I thought about. Anyway, back to you.
Can I just mention that the square and compass symbol, the Masonic square and compass, pretty much depicts that, doesn't it? The black hole sun, and how the magnetism affects the moon and the
The
sun, and then it's
angles.
Sirius above, I think.
Yeah, the
You,
angles. Yeah. Yeah. No, I didn't mean to
yeah.
interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. No, there was I saw a video about this, and I've got it somewhere. I'll send it to Carly to put in the link because it's really interesting. But it basically is the trajectory of the magnetism coming from the black hole sun, and how it affects the sun and the moon. I'm not going to explain it that well because it's a little bit beyond me in some ways, but it's basically depicting the square and compass symbol in its formation. And I think that's another one of the clues, because they seem to, the parasites seem to want to plug this home all day, every day, through every possible means, as we were saying before, through music, through symbology. It seems like they're pretty much obsessed with this plasma event one way or another, doesn't it?
Yep.
As well as the ancients and the scripture and everything. It doesn't seem like there's much else really going on apart from that when you really think about it. But you got to wonder, why is that? Because if they are the ones who will be most affected by it and need to go underground, why are they so keen to seed this into our awareness without actually giving us the full story all of the time? I think that's quite a curious thing.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple ideas. One could be we're easy to control in a state of fear. And, a lot of these images that they present, people associate it with like devil worship. Ooh, it's paganism. It's the devil. But the thing they don't understand is that all these symbols have been appropriated. And originally they were meant to inform us, and they've perverted them and appropriated them and made people scared of them and made people associate it with, like, ooh, the occult. Ooh, it's evil because occult means hidden, right? Well, it's the Roman Catholic freaking empire that is hiding this from you, and they don't have your best interests at heart. So maybe the things that they tell you are occult and antichrist and not canonical in the Bible. It's not a canon. It's not a weapon. It's non-canonite. It's non-canonite-anonical. It's non-canonada-ian. The cons, right? The cons, the kings, and like if you look up the Slayer album, Divine Intervention, you can see the pattern clearly. And I've got a video, like I said, I'm not going to keep plugging my stuff. You've done a great job of that. But just my video where it's like the reality of our realm or something, I posted like 6 days ago. But the image lines up so well with that Divine Intervention album cover. And just the square and compass and the different angles, and kind of like almost like the sigil of Lucifer. Like it almost lines up with how our eyes process vision too, which ties into kind of the whole eyeball earth, and like just everything is as within, so without, as above, so below. It's all fractal. It's all holographic. And by holographic, I don't mean like fake or computerized or something weird like that. What that really means is every little fragment contains the whole within it. It's just like a degraded, not as clear a version of the whole. So if you like, it ties back to, as you understand one thing, you kind of understand it all, right? And when you're talking about this square and compass, it makes an A, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you look at the ancient Greek letters that they used to depict the alpha and omega. It really looks like that A that the Greeks used for alpha. And then what looks like the omega is the W. And that makes me think of A and W, right? They code it like A and W root beer, right? It's probably not like, Adams and Williams partnered together, or maybe that's the story, but like because like it's even the logo for Starbucks, right? The little W-shaped tail that the Starbucks logo has. That's this event, because sometimes the squatter man's legs or arms, it's electric, so it can like striate, or what's the word, like bend up or down. Basically, there's different, depending on the current and where it's going, it can make these different shapes. And one of them is that fish kind of W-tailed goddess, and that's the omega, right? The omega symbol with Greek. So literally the alpha and omega event is coded into a lot of old, I don't know what they call bas reliefs or carvings or religious iconography. I've been looking, a lot of my Strange Gods series has the stuff about the A and the alpha and omega stuff and how it relates to the Masonic square and compass. Yeah. So, and I'm just trying to tie that into the shape of our realm, the way the black hole sun works, and the way our eyeball works, the way our vision works. So yeah, great question. I hope I did it justice.
Yeah, you definitely did. Sorry to butt in again here, Callie, but there is one more thing I wanted to throw in here because I think it seems relevant, especially in relation to Neil Bentley's work talking about Sirius. I just wondered whether you think, Joshua, that there might be any link between the trajectory of Sirius, which has been linked to the expected cataclysm as well, and the squatum and the plasma event, because it seems to me that these two things are very much aligned, and it might actually be the return of Sirius that has the impact that sets off this magnetic field from the black hole sun or whatever. I don't know. I'd like
Yeah,
to
no, it very well could be. So one of the things that keeps coming up in my research, there's a couple things. So Orion keeps coming up, Sirius keeps coming up, Scorpio and Libra keep coming up. Those are the main things. And I think there's a reason that Ophiuchus, the 13th zodiac, is hidden from us. I think he's involved in this somehow. But speaking seriously of Sirius, we'll get serious with Sirius now. Isn't it also the dog star?
Yes.
Or the dog star is part of Sirius, right? And so that's dog is God inverted, right? And so many ancient cultures were tracking Sirius for sure. And the things that I immediately go to is the Dogon tribe. And there you got the dog again, right? And just like in Babylonian stuff, the Dagon, those doggone, daggone, daggone it, daggone it, they done it again, you know? Doggone it. And no God. Dogon is no God inverted too, right? And there's this tribe that wear this kanaga, this headdress that looks just like the squatter man, and all their little symbols are just it's all this plasma stuff, all the discharge patterns. And they have this, according to the narrative, and you never know who to believe, right? But this is according to the narrative. There were like French anthropologists that went and visited them back in the 1800s or some shit. And they were finding out that they knew way more about Sirius than we did. We found out stuff later about like the second star or the second binary star that Sirius had, and like a 50-year orbit. And they do this thing every 50 years where they honor this, you know, Sirius pattern, whatever you want to call it, loop, cycle. That's the word I was looking for. Cycle. All right. And of all the words I'm dropping, magnetohydrodynamics, and I can't remember cycle, right? Okay. So, what's interesting to me is when you start thinking about religions, like the Jewish people have the Jubilee. And what it is, it's a cycle of 7 years of seven cycles of seven, right? And that's 49. And then the 50th year, they like, everything's inverted. They free all the slaves, return all the wealth to the people, and everything switches roles, and the kings get governed by the people. That's like the Jubilee year. And in the Aztec, they would, like every 50 or 52 years, it was something real, I think it might be 50, but they would go on their top of their pyramids and their houses and just stare up at the sky and wait for the end. And if the end didn't come, they would celebrate. So there is something to do with this 50-year cycle of Sirius because the Dogon tracked it, the Hebrews track it, and it's encoded in their Jubilee lore or history or mythology or my theology instead of his story. And then the Aztec got it there too. So do I know exactly what it is? No, but it's important and I'm working on it. And that's what I have to offer based on your question right now.
Yeah, the pyramids, according to which there's a really interesting book here again called The House of the Hidden Places and the Book of the Master by Marsham Adams. And in that, he's talking about how the Pyramid of Giza was actually primarily a lookout point for tracking Sirius for that exact reason. So it was obviously taken extremely seriously, you know, this trajectory of Sirius, wasn't it? As you were saying.
Yeah, and I'll just propose a wild theory that I heard just because, you know, people like interesting stuff, and I don't claim this to be true, but just a thought, right? You know how they recently discovered some pillars underneath the pyramids and stuff, right? Well, check this out, right? So I think the sun is an anode. Anu, the Sumerian Anu, it's an anode. And the earth is a cathode. And they build things here like cathedrals, cathode rails, cathedrals that they tell us are churches, right? Place to worship God. Well, L, right? Electricity. L, electricity, right? L, the elect are in charge.
Cathedral. And all the
And
angels, isn't it? It's like
yeah,
Ezekiel, Raphael, Gabriel. It's always
Michael,
L.
yeah, it's
Mm.
all, and all the angels end in L, right? And then
Mm.
the other things they have are basilicas, right? You've heard of
Mm.
basilicas? Well,
Mm.
basalt and silica, basalt and silica, basilica.
Yeah.
It's a way, and all these churches, these cathedrals, these cathedrals, and these basilicas, these basalt and silica generators are, a lot of them are built over water aquifers, just like Tesla's thing was, right? And I think there might be salt or electrolytes in there. And what they're doing is amplifying and harvesting telluric currents, dragon lines, ley lines, inner Earth, whatever's coming from the black hole sun, probably just inner Earth gases, right? And potentially, one thing I've heard, and I haven't dug into this, but could the stars be projections from monuments on Earth? And that's why the monuments are all lined up with the stars so well. Rather than being built to mimic the sky, do they generate the stars? Now, I'm not saying that's true, but it was just a mind-blowing theory that somebody threw out there, and I just wanted to share it for people to chew on.
Listening to you, Joshua, my brain's like, my nerd brain is going. It's like more input, not in a
Well,
good way, in a good way. Like, it's
yeah,
good.
some of my videos, after I say so, I'll make a connection while I'm talking over my images that I align. And I'll just go out loud. I'll go.
Well, it goes, and that's why obviously Stephen enjoys your work and vice versa, etc. Because it links in, doesn't it? I mean, obviously the salt water, and also with Logan from Decode Your Reality, salt is obviously it's a huge part of because it's a conductor, and salt water is the conductor. So they blocked all well, the Romans, what did they ever do for us? They only they built roads, yada yada, but they blocked up all the salt waterways, which used to power the old standing stones, according to Stephen's research, etc. So that energized the Earth's grid, like the true Earth's grid. So it's interesting, perhaps, maybe, I mean, again, I'm just going off, we're just having a chat, aren't we? I'm not saying this is correct, but if that energy from that inner Earth or that black hole sun, because things tend to be in a trinity, don't they? So there's the sun that we can see, there's the moon, there's obviously something going on underneath that is power, that I think that is linked. And I've seen a lot of diagrams like Caroline said earlier, and I'll put one up now whilst I'm jibber jabbering on about it, so people again can, because the visual speaks 1,000 words, doesn't it? I mean,
Yes.
Caroline brought up the dance with Sirius and our sun, and obviously, Neil studied that. He's actually working on a 5-hour presentation. So I think it may be longer by the time he's finished, that we're going to kind of start going through on dark matters. I mean, that is really nerd stuff. I mean, if you have to be really into this stuff to be able to sit through, maybe 5 or 6 hours of me and Neil doing our due diligence. But this idea of the blue and red, like you said as we've kind of covered earlier, that create the purple color. Like, again, that is the dance between Sirius and our sun. There's got to be something with that, like you say, with the Dogon tribes, and how that is tracked, and how that was linked up to at least the pyramids in Egypt. Because according to Neil, the tribe of Dan splintered. Half of them went over and built Rome, and then came back and slaughtered the rest of us that kind of remembered how this place really works, which is why they slaughtered the women, because we were allegedly the gatekeepers of the yew trees, which are the portals in and out of this place. And there's obviously been some kind of serious hijack on this place. So whether that's linked into that or not. I mean, certainly, like you said, we talk about the Aryans. Again, that's Neil's work, Aryan, like you say, in that phonetic drift. Is the Phoenicians, is Ireland, the Aryan, the Aryans, were the Irish, which allegedly before the cataclysm, the last one, Atlantis perhaps splintered into what we can now call Scotland, England, Ireland. So the Aryans were the Atlanteans. That's another theory. I mean, you mentioned in one of your videos about again them talking in pop culture, Van Halen, or Van Halen with the fallen angels that they hail. Like, so who do you think, we're talking about these parasites, and again, it's so embedded in our pop culture, isn't it? Even like, I was a metalhead, you could perhaps tell from my antecedents and my tattoos and my black outfits and the dark matters, etc. But Tool, Maynard, Keenan, he's allegedly a Freemason, and their drummer I think they used to have a drum kit built out of either titanium or gold, don't quote me, and they used to position it in certain, we know it's like frequency as a big thing, and they sang all the time. One of the famous ones is "Mum's gonna fix it all soon. Mum's gonna come back and put it back the way that it ought to be. Wash it all away. Wash it all away." Literally, once you kind of break this down, they're telling us all the time. So, according to a lot of the kind of old, and who knows if the myths or not, they may be the truth, that these parasites or these fallen angels, these fallen ones, they came from Sirius, allegedly. I think I might be getting this wrong, but they can't leave. They that's why they rule from the inner city of London. They rule, that's classed as Hades, as kind of the lower realm, and which is why they can't rule from Baal Moral, because it's too high and too close to the North Star Polaris, which allegedly, like you said, Joshua, they keep us away from all this occult, it's occult, it's dark, it's don't look at it, basically, isn't it? Don't look there, look here. But it's that integration, the alchemy of the light and the dark, which is what I bang on about a lot about dark matters, hence why the dark matters, right? But I suppose what my question is, who do you think these parasites are? Like, we talk about fallen angels, we talk about, these hybrids or shepherd kings of the Anu. Who do you think, who's doing this, I suppose, in your mind? Who are they to you and from your studies and research?
Well, now I've been able to speak pretty confidently on everything so far, and delineate and denote when things diverge into speculation on my part, aside from what I know. And this I don't know. I have some theories, but I think they're like the hidden hand. I think they're the remnants of a very specific bloodline. Okay, so I think that somewhere in our past, that the whether it was the Denisovans or the Neanderthals or some other form of human-like being, ruled. Okay, and the Book of Giants, and in the Sumerian tablets, the Book of Giants is from like the Dead Sea Scrolls, non-canonical, and that and the Sumerian tablets talk about this other class or race of beings, like call them the Anunnaki. Do I think they're from space? Well, I have a different model of our Earth now. Could we have different snow globes outside of our snow globes, and people could snow globe hop? And some of these other stars are like the suns of those other snow globes. Maybe they come from Sirius in that way, like extraterrestrial, extra land. Terrestrial means land. Terra firma, terrapin, right? Tortoise, toroid. Tortuga. It's every word you could think of for tortoise or turtle has like the toroidal, TR kind of tower toroidal thing built into it. So I think that at some point they either bred with or intentionally, like, in like a lab or something, at one point they had this different race with them as their slaves called the Ajiji, according to the Sumerian tablets. And this isn't just some Zechariah Sitchin Freemason Disney version stuff. I'm not by his version, right, where they come from Nibiru and space and all that, right? But we can separate the baby from the bathwater, in my opinion, and we can say that some other class of humanoid that was a little bit superior mentally, a little bit larger, and a different skull shape. We could call him Homo capensis, maybe. You look at Jacob Rothschild, right? And Jacob is the one who cheated Esau out of his birthright. And Jacob means supplanter. And somehow Jacob is the one who gets venerated in the Bible, which seems to be backwards in a lot of places and mixed up with astrotheology and history in the Middle East, and people think it's the word of God, and there's a lot of truth in there, but you got to have an eye, you got to have discernment to really know what it's talking about. And so I think that their bloodline got choked off at some point, And I think it might be, maybe, and look, I don't think that any one group of people are inherently evil. I think that, ultimately the power corrupts, and the people at the top of this chain are the parasites. But a lot of my research has honestly led me to the Ashkenazi, and they were from Japheth, right? Biblically, whether that's, real people or tribes of people or just code, whatever, they identify with the tribe. Like Noah had Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Shem are the Shemites, the Semitic people, right? Come from Shem. And anybody that came from Japheth is non-Shemitic. They're not Shemitic. And from Japheth came Ashkenaz, and through Ashkenaz, I think, came Gomer, or that might be reversed. The Gomerians, the Camarians, the Chameleons, the Sumerians, maybe. Maybe.
All Aryan, aren't they?
Yeah, and so I think that their bloodline got so choked off that it went down to 4, I think, maternal, possibilities, people. And because of that, they've had to adapt. And, that's why the royals and elite people have been known to do inbreeding, because they're trying to preserve what's left of this, what they consider to be superior to us. And that's why in some of the Jewish texts and stuff, like what do you call that? They're really evil one, where they talk about all of us like Goyim and chattel and, the Talmud. Yeah. And I think that's what this harkens back to, right? Is this other class of beings that think they're superior to us and may have had a hand in creating or shaping or breeding us, and may have mixed even animals in, like it talks about in the Book of Giants. And now they suffer from all kinds of birth defects. And if you look at Jacob Rothschild, he had that cone head skull. He had that Homo capensis skull, that cone head. It ties to the Paracas skulls. And and most of them were red haired or blonde haired. And they were, so that ties back to the north, to the center, to the cold, or underground, one of the two, maybe both. But I think the underground people would get almost gray and shorter and look like the aliens, typically would be depicted. But I think these tall, cone-headed Nords are different. They're red-haired Nords. Nordic, North.
I think Neil calls it the RB1 gene, the red hair, white skin. It's linked to the Nephilim, but they don't know where it came from.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on. Sorry, Josh.
No, I'm just going to honor his work. I haven't heard it yet, but just like when I talk about what I know and you line up what he's talked about, it kind of validates my own research, and we're completely independent of each other. And I can't wait to dive into his work. So I just want to honor you. Keep bringing him up, so I'm definitely going to check him out. So thank you. I can already tell I'm going to learn a lot.
Yeah, I'm one of his biggest fans. Like, they kicked him off Facebook and took his group down. He can be quite cutting, but as these kind of minds are sometimes. But I suppose I'm totally with you on the eyeball theory. It was a friend of mine, John Cooper, a friend of ours, man and Caroline, who first introduced me to the eyeball theory. He said we live on an eyeball, and I went, like the Bible, but the Taurus field, blah, blah, blah. And that cone, the idea of the cones, of how the eye literally works, and like you say, the sigil of Lucifer and how we perceive light. I think we live in the eye of God. I think the North Star, like to Stephen's work, is Polaris, which is kind of the way out, right? And which is why they demonize it. And obviously you see my channel in the early days. I was following the Disney, as Neil calls it, the Disney-fied timelines. Again, to promote all this Satanism and stuff. And look, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't go on, because I've met people and survivors of satanic ritual abuse, but we know there's something that is, again, no disrespect to anybody who's been through anything like that, but it is kind of a distraction in a big sense. But certainly the eyeball thing was a big thing. I mean, the last episode I did with Neil, where we talked about Trump's bloodline, don't get me, well, you're American, we should get your opinion on that or not, because it's just an absolute distraction and waste of energy, other than he's linked to Time and Janus and his bloodlines and the rest of it. He's part of it. But what they're trying to do is, it's called Sabbateanism, and I don't know whether you've heard of that, but they're trying to be so evil and so dark that they bring back the tribulation, really. They bring back the coming of the Christ. Now, I actually believe that it's all things at all times. And we can't begin to possibly fathom that. But when you can resolve a lot of paradoxes here in your own mind when you realize it is all things at all times, in my opinion. And it is that as above, so below, so within, so without. As we see the constellations, like Larry Cypress's work as well, that, who again stands on the back of giants, as we all do, really, don't we? We're all just trying to make sense of this. But actually the zodiac is actually, in the landscape itself. And a lot of these petrified titans, and Albion means land of the giants, Albo meaning white, again, so there's that RB1 gene, red hair, white skin, and they didn't know where they came from. And obviously the Nephilim allegedly came from, the fallen bloodlines, etc., and so on. The goal, as per the law of one, is this Luciferic consciousness, or these fallen ones, to come down here because we chose it to be as negative as possible. I mean, there's a theory that actually, we're not actually coming into the reign of Christ or the Christos or that frequency of it, because I think it's a frequency, but I also think there was a man that, achieved that frequency with the help of Mary Magdalene, who was then demonized, called a prostitute, and the rest of it. I do think those stories hold a lot of weight. I mean, certainly, studying the legal system, as I've done, and legalese and etymology, as you have. Once you kind of decode the language, as I always say, the Matrix, that hijack, it has an overlay, it has a code. And once you've kind of seen through that code, and symbols obviously are a big part of that, you can't kind of unsee it. It tells itself. It's constantly telling you, what it is, I suppose. So, that's, I suppose that's kind of my kind of overview of this place, and certainly that, J, Jesus, Jesus, whatever. J is a Latinized letter. Neil taught me this, so it didn't exist. So there wasn't a guy called Jesus. That's a commodification. They took it. They basically commodified the Christos frequency and sold it back to people. So billions of people are worshipping at an altar of wood and stone when it says to you, don't worship at an altar of wood and stone. So there's that inversion and perversion and subversion. So again, it's in the language, it's in the code. So we're all pulling on these common threads. But again, it's almost like I say now, in the world of misinformation and information, when we don't really know what's real or what's not anymore, it's almost like you have to listen to yourself. There's a frequency to, I think, once, and I don't mean like, oh, I've attained such a frequency, man. I don't mean it like that, but those types. It's something in your DNA, and I know me and Caroline have been feeling this a lot recently. And it's almost like you're telling yourself, but you need to start listening to yourself. The rest is the reflection of the illusion or the dream or whatever you want to call it, and it gets so palpable that it's just telling you all the time. And once you've seen it, as we know, you can't unsee it. So, I suppose what do you think this place is, and what do you think it's for? Like, what's your kind of...
Can I talk for like 20 minutes straight?
Yes.
Okay. Just interrupt me if I get too windy.
Somebody get me a beer.
And if I get too off track, I may say, hey, bring me back. Where was I? Okay. Because I have a lot of thoughts about this, and they're all thoughts, right? But I don't know. So I think I want to start with you talking about Sabbatean, right? Sabotage, the saboteurs, right? It's also
the Fabians, isn't it? The Fabians, the Fabians, the Sabbateans. We're linked to the Ashkenazis, and the beat goes on, like it's all interlinked, like you say, isn't it?
And the Sabbath, right? The Sabbath, Black Sabbath, and Sabbath. The Sabbath was actually originally Saturday, right? And that's Saturn. That's Saturn's day. So this all goes back to Saturn worship, okay? And what I think happened is, and this is the theory of David Perrat, which I think makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to tie in a little bit of Immanuel Velikovsky. So this is from the Saturn Myth by David Talbot, and the Worlds in Collision by Immanuel Velikovsky. So Talbot thinks that the stars above us used to be a lot different, okay? And they're called wandering planets in the Book of Enoch for a reason, or wandering stars or whatever. And I think they're on electromagnetic paths above us, not like, above us, circling above us, okay? And some of them dip below the ecliptic and go into the underworld and stuff. But basically, there was an alignment in the sky in the past where the planets were much lower, and this is like every planet gets associated with a god, and even the days of our week are named after planets. I'm sure you're all aware of that, so I'm not going to bore you with that, right? We can talk about that later if we need to, but it really ties down to a few planets that get really like take center stage. So, and these planets are going to be Jupiter, but put him on hold for now, okay? Because you can't see him. He's hidden by Saturn. He's behind Saturn or obstructed by Saturn. And we're also going to think about Venus, and we're going to think about Mars. Those are the key players: Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter. Okay, and I think there was this alignment where Jupiter was behind or obscured by Saturn, and in front of Saturn was Venus, like a eyeball inside of an eye, and then within Venus was Mars, and that was like the pupil of the eye, and it was like stable at our center, right? And this was the Saturnian age, the golden age, the age where there were different suns before the sun and moon fell, or whatever, right? Our sun didn't really exist because it was constantly light, right? It was the night light, the phoenix, the foe, right? Foe means light, and nix means night. The night, the light, and the night, the phoenix, right? And this celestial alignment. These planets eventually, whatever they are, I'm not a NASA guy, so they're not like, floating space rocks or whatever, but maybe there's some kind of like plasmatic projection of something from below, or manifestation of the black hole sun's energy in our sky and trapped in these like electromagnetic orbits. And maybe there is sentience involved. Maybe they are trapped souls of, fallen angels, condemned to, reside, to be trapped or something. I don't know. But, when these planets started exchanging electromagnetic discharges between each other, it created patterns that are very familiar if you study how plasma discharge works, right? And the patterns that result from plasma physics and in dichotron instabilities and Birkeland currents and toroids and things like that, right? And a lot of the images that aren't immediately linked in your mind easily to the Squatterman image, a lot of the petroglyphs are kind of like, they make sense when you think about the patterns that this alignment could have caused if they started exchanging electromagnetism. And then you think about the Titanomachy or whatever, the War of the Gods in the sky in Greek myth, right? And then the Hindu stuff about the War of the Gods in the sky. So I think the gods were originally planets. And we can talk later about, did some bad actors claim the names of the planets and then reenact what happened in the sky on the ground? I think so. That's where I'm leaning. We can talk about that more later. But what ended up happening is that Venus, okay, now this is super important to me, right? So Venus in Latin is lux fair, and you're talking about a carrier earlier. Something was a carrier, right? Well, FER means carrier, like ferry, right? And I think it's also related to iron, ferrous. But in Greek, it's phor. That's the transliteration and the phonetic drift, right? So it's for, same thing, but just spelled completely different, and you wouldn't know unless you research etymology. So phosphorus is light bearer. Lux fair, Lucifer, is light bearer. And the Greeks and the Romans both called Venus by those names, right? Lucifer and Phosphorus, the light bearer, the morning star. Now, Lucifer is also associated with the morning star in the Bible, and so is Jesus. He's called the morning star too. And so Lucifer in the Bible, I think it's Isaiah 14:12 maybe, says Lucifer fell. O son of the morning, Lucifer, you fell. You tried to be like the Most High. You tried to take his spot, and you laid nations low. I'm paraphrasing, but that's, caused electromagnetic destruction, right? And that's like the myth in Greek about Phaethon, right? Phaethon driving his father's sun chariot, getting too close to the earth and scorching the earth and burning the earth. And then Zeus had to strike him down, right? Well, that's where Jupiter comes in. Jupiter emerged during this electromagnetic whatever. And this is so important, okay? The name Jupiter comes from Deus Pater, Deus Pater, Jupiter. The D, the J, the Z, it's all part of this phonetic drift and that I'm talking about, right? This transliteration. Jed pillar, the Jed pillar, the Jedi, the Force, all these words sound like right? So Deus Pater or Jupiter, right? Deus Pater was Proto-Indo-European, and Deus means star. Peter means father, like patron, patronage, whatever, paternal. And so it's the sky father. Saturn is the sky father, or Jupiter, I'm sorry, is the sky father, Deus Peter. And Deus is also Deus, or Deus, right? Or Zeus, the D, the J, the Z. Zeus, Jesus, hey Zeus, right? Zeus, Jupiter, Deus Pater, it's also Thor, right? That's not etymologically related, but Zeus and Thor are the same figure, so we know that Thor is Jupiter. So Jupiter is Thor, and Jupiter is Deus Pater, and Jupiter is the Sky Father or the Star Father, and he intervened to strike Phaethon down, Zeus or Jupiter, right? And emerged from behind Saturn somehow and became the new father. So it went from Chronos, right? Chronological Chronos, which is Saturn or Satan, right? I think maybe to his rule in the sky to now Jupiter or Zeus was ruling after this cosmic upheaval. And I think all those stories are related in the way I just described. And basically, Venus, Lucifer fell, descended, and got closer to the Earth. And Mars, the warlike planet, was involved in this too, and caused electromagnetic destruction. And so I think that's kind of to start off to understand why they worship Saturn and how this war in the heavens and change of heavenly order is tied to the astrotheology that I think is encoded in the Bible in a lot of places. Now, what also I think is important is that it's obvious that this stuff comes from the north, okay, or from the center, because Christmas, the winter solstice, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, the sun doesn't rise in different spots. It rises in different spots every year as it gets farther away from the north from their perspective, right? And in the winter months, from the northern perspective, from inside the equator, from the center, the sun gets farther away, but it stops rising in a further away spot every day on the 21st, the solstice. The sun stands still. Joshua stopped the sun. Yeshua stopped the sun, dead for 3 days, and then the Son, Sunson of God, from Joshua to Jesus, Yahushua, whatever. I know J's. You got that right. Resurrected after 3 days, after being hanging, right, and dead, and brought life and warmth back to the northern hemisphere. Now, if that story was started in the southern hemisphere, it would be Christmas in like June or July. Christmas in July, ho ho ho, right? So that's more proof of where it comes from, right? And you were talking about like this Luciferian energy coming, and Steiner talks a lot about that, or Carl Jung, whatever, tomato, and Ariman, right? This digital AI kind of enslaving influence. And Jung says that as we transition from, and I'm paraphrasing, to the age of Aquarius, Venus shall inflame the savage forces of Lucifer or something like that. So it's this transition also to the age of Aquarius, because what you have to understand too is, when the sun rises in front of a different constellation every age, right? That's why we call them the ages. So the age of Aquarius, the sun rises in front of Aquarius. That's the backdrop of the rising sun. Changes about every 2,160 years. Times 12 constellations, you get about 25,920 years. That's your, in my opinion, that's related to the Yuga cycle and the ages and the precession of the equinox. And I think these events fall at the halfway points. About every 13,000 years is when they happen, approximately. And when you talked about the Bible, right? Yeah, the Bible, the double Taurus, right? And just like Sirius and Sirius, right? Taurus and Taurus, the bull, right? But the toroidal field, but those horns of the bull also make like Taurus shape when you look at it like a Taurus field, right? So this realm seems to be, like I mentioned before, some kind of holographic thing where everything's encoded. Why do the elites rub it in our face? I don't know. Could it be like, because I got to this point where I feel like I got it figured out pretty much. And if anybody doesn't get it, when I gift wrap it to them on a silver platter and willing to answer questions, I feel like Nirvana, you know? Oh, well, whatever, never mind, right? And I just pursue my own bliss, right? And could these people be like, you know, these people like view us as such idiots that it's like, if we can just tell them the truth and give it to them and still they're going to pay us money and worship us, like we may as well take advantage of these morons, kind of like the walrus and the carpenter or whatever, shucking all the oysters on their way, you know, and maybe they just want to take advantage of it. Maybe they like to rub it in our face and they get off on, you know, how much they can get away with without us fucking waking up and revolting, you know.
Well, and I
But
think it's coded
yeah.
that they have to tell us as well, don't they? And that's why, you know, we're from kind of cradle to grave, dumbed down, programmed, brainwashed, you know, set to work, yada yada yada. The beat goes on, so that people just think it's entertainment when really it's just all ritual, and it's all the when you. I mean, we talk about it like, God, these people are morons. Why can't they see it? But it is only for those that have the eyes to see. Like people think, some people might listen to this and think we're all fucking crackers, like, you know, I can kind of
And
get
I'm gonna
how they get there, but we're not, right? But we're not.
Well, what you're talking about now gets into what I've been realizing lately about like MK Ultra and like demons and possession and NPCs and egregores and thought forms and programs. And what I think is that they've realized that they don't need to subject people to secret MK Ultra anymore. They can just do it through impoverishing people, exposing them to constant negativity and, you know, influences through social media, through the news, through pop culture, all this stuff. And basically what they can do, like the movie Split, they can fracture our personalities. And when you fracture the psyche, the spirit kind of goes along with it and it allows another thing to be implanted. And whether you call that a demon or a thought form or an egregore or they're possessed or they're programmed or they're an NPC, these people that don't get this are literally, whatever name you want to call it, but possessed or NPCs or whatever. They're programmed by thought forms and egregores, and their mind is not their own. And ultimately, you have to forgive them because they do not know, you know. And just try to plant seeds is all you can do. But yeah, I mean, we are literally genies in a bottle. Our body is the bottle, right? And life is this cosmic mirror, and it can be a nightmare mirror or it can be a beautiful dream. And what I've gotten into with young recently, and you were talking about the pineal gland earlier, well, like Daniel or somebody met God at the land of Peniel too. It's like encoded in the Bible. Like, you know, somebody would say, "Oh no, there's no connection," but come on, right? Come on, use your right brain and your intuition, like you were saying earlier. If it gives you goosebumps and you feel good when you talk about it, it's probably true, right? But awakening is like opening every chakra like at the same time, and then if you're not ready for it, you can almost go crazy like in the process because you realize everything's backwards, and then like you're willing to believe anything because you know what you've been sold is wrong, right? But when you start, in my mind, when you start following synchronicities, like what people would call coincidences, when you start, instead of like thinking, oh, that's a coincidence or there are no real synchronicities, pursue them, acknowledge them, honor them, seek them, and live your life like a scavenger hunt, trying to acknowledge and see what happens, right? Pursue your bliss and follow the synchronicities. And you kind of like tune in with your pineal gland like a radio, right? If you balance it right, all the energies, and you can tune into source or the akashic fields. And what I think it relates to is like the acacia tree has DMT, right? And our brain secretes DMT naturally. So we tune into the akashic through the acacia, through the DMT, which you don't need to smoke it. You don't need to go to the jungles of Peru. You just need to purify your mind and align with source and be divinely authentic and receive what is coming to you when you do that. And yeah, so I'll pass it back to you and then let you process that or ask me whatever.
I will. I've got a question for you. So, touching on what they kind of want to rub in your faces and what they don't, it seems to me that they want to rub the vast majority of it in your faces, and especially this plasma stuff encoded. But they don't seem to want to rub this androgynous stuff in your face quite as much, as in they're not hiding it because that's what they are, but they don't seem to want us to know about that as much. And now you've even got people saying, even previous conspiracy theorists calling people who look at this stuff conspiracy theorists, which is absolutely ridiculous, really. But it seems like this level is something that is really hard for a lot of people to get their heads around, even people who usually would consider themselves to be awakened or whatever. But there seems to be a link from what you're saying in some of your videos with the androgynous stuff and this plasma stuff, and I would like you to explain what that is, please.
Awesome question. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to answer that. So
I love this stuff as well, so I'm like ready. I love the transgender androgyne stuff.
Yeah, so if you look at the Squatter Man image, the two toroidal kind of circles on the side of it in a lot of the images, it's not really two dots. It's like a toroid. It's like a donut, and only the brightest parts are visible sometimes. The brightest discharge, which look like two dots instead of a donut. And some cultures, based on my research of petroglyphs and how it connects to religious iconography and carvings and statues and idols and all that stuff, it's mimicking this thing they saw in the sky, this neon god, this primordial man, right? Or what you'd call Adam Kadmon, right? Or what you'd call Baphomet, right? And it's this androgyne, and it's this depiction of the union of polar opposites, basically. The union, not, and I won't even say opposites, just polarities, a union of the polarities, basically. And if you look at the Squatter Man image, there's also a lot, and most of the images, there's a little line that extends beyond the legs, almost like a penis, right? And so those two dots can get interpreted as breasts, and the thing between the legs, it's interpreted as a penis. And the thing you got to think of is, imagine not knowing any of this that I'm telling you, and then you see this shit go out in the sky, right? All of a sudden the sky turns into a plasma screen and starts glitching and showing you these neon freaking images looking like, what is going on, right? It's going to be interpreted in so many ways from your own like cultural viewpoint and your own lenses, and additionally your own perspective as far as like latitudinal wise, right? Because depending on how far away you are from it, what your latitude is, it's going to change your perspective, and you might only see the top or the bottom or certain angles, right? And it gets encoded in so many different ways, but one of those ways, I believe, is the primordial man. That's Adam Kadmon, that's Baphomet, that's the divine androgyne. And maybe this hidden hand that we've been talking about controls all the breeding of the elites nowadays, because if they are androgyne and can't reproduce and use like fake baby bumps and stuff, then there's some kind of genetic like IVF cloning, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, like in a lab, how they're being reproduced, or surrogates or something. And maybe the hidden hand has some kind of contract with a different class of people, like going back to like the Anunnaki and the Ajiji, and then the Ajiji are a different class besides us, and then there's the ones above them. So there's like three levels of order here, at least I think. And as above, so below. There's the three again, right? And maybe they require it as a form in exchange, so they have control, and then they kind of brainwash them and tell them, "Oh, you're going to be like God. You're going to be like God if you do this. You got to." So they don't really know that they're worshiping planets and like submitting all of their ability to be independent, right? So they can't breed. They have to invert their kids. They have to sacrifice somebody close to them. All these things are part of the contract to be on the world stage in any way, shape, or form. And if people are on that stage and they start saying things they're not allowed to say from that contract, a lot of them end up getting, hanging by a doorknob, right? Or something like that, right? There was like 13 different celebrities who were starting to expose, especially the trafficking, who got hung by doorknobs, and it was called sewer slides. I don't know what gets censored on YouTube these days, so we'll say sewer slides, right? But they weren't. like Chester Bennington, Chris Cornell, Anthony Bourdain, Chester Bennington, Avicii, Kate Spade, Michael Hutchins, Anthony Bourdain, David Carradine. Those are the ones I can just remember off the top of my head. But so I think that, like, when you think about cattle, a castrated calf is called a bullock. I mean, you think about Sandra Bullock, right? And they do that to make them to control their breeding and to make them more docile and easier to control. And then it ties into the castratos, right? In the old days, they used to castrate like young boys before puberty, so they would retain unique singing voices. And doing it before puberty would cause like physical deformities where they'd get like really elongated and like weird physically. And so when I think about people like Mariah Carey, who has like a 5-octave dolphin whistle, no, I think
That's a
she was,
dude.
yeah. And you talk about like satanic cults, right? Well, they don't worship Satan. I can assure you of that. They know that he's just an idea, like a boogeyman. They want you to think that they worship him, but really they're just all about inverting nature, inverting what you call it, God's creation or nature or whatever. They're about inverting that and perverting it for some reason. Maybe because they know this event happens and they rebel against, the God that wants to plasma fry us all. Maybe, I have a lot of theories about why they do it. I don't know. But thinking about performers, these front men, these stage men, right, that push their agendas, a lot of them have unique singing voices. And everybody on the world stage, it's like, okay, so I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way. I don't have anything against trans people. And, live your life however you want to do it. Just don't hurt people or try to, go pushing your viewpoints on kids or whatever, right? And I'm cool, right? I love everybody. I love you. I love everybody. But there's clearly this agenda.
In it.
There's
Yeah,
clearly a transgender agenda, a trans agenda. And through our food, through our hygiene products, through water with atrazine that makes frogs gay and makes them hermaphroditic and turns 1 out of 10 male frogs into egg-laying female frogs, right? There's just so many like endocrine and hormone disruptors to where like even the normal people now, like me and you, maybe even some people would say, oh, they got this. Oh, everybody's transgender. Well, not really, right? We kind of are. I have some mixed traits because of all the hormone disruptors, right? But on the parasitic level above, they don't feed their kids that stuff. 1 in 36 of us has the tism, right? And like, try to do a search and see how many celebrity kids have that, right? It's nowhere near 1 in 36. So I can only find like 2
And
of
we
them.
should say, for people who don't know what that is, Joshua, I think obviously it's when their eyes are like one eye's a bit bog-eyed in it.
Oh no, that's strabismus. But I'm talking about autism.
Oh, is that smell?
I'm talking about autism. 1 in 36 of us.
Oh, autism. Sorry.
Yeah, my fault. I said tism because I don't know what gets censored. I don't know. I said tism. I should have said autism. And look, I know there's inherent traits and there's a spectrum, right? And but a lot of the evidence shows that like it's metal accumulation in the brain from like vaccines and different things that prevent our ability to detox those metals, and like aluminum and different stuff accumulates in our brain. And in the young people, that would be that kind of stuff. But in the older people, it would be dementia or Alzheimer's eventually setting in from too much of that exposure, right? And but no celebrity kids have that, and there's so many celebrities with adopted kids and celebrities that were adopted, and so many celebrities that admittedly have royal blood or related to Queen Elizabeth or whatever. So they're all plants. Whether they're all inverts or some other kind of like XXY Klinefelter, Marfan, androgyne. I tend to think personally that it's a lot. They do a lot of different stuff. So the main way they do it in the super elite is they do it in utero. So after the 8th week, the skeleton is formed, but the genitals aren't. And then they inject the opposite hormone and create like a free martin, like an artificial free martin, like it happens in cattle. And the skeleton will look, clearly male, but then the genitalia will maybe even be female, right? Or mixed or hermaphroditic or whatever you want to call that. Yeah, so
Hence
all of them.
Hence the Nirvana album. You put that up, Joshua, on there, didn't you? Like, and I went, oh my God, yeah. Their album was called In Utero, wasn't it? They're telling you again.
Yeah, they were telling us, oh well, whatever, never mind. Nirvana.
It's like kind of slightly unfathomable but it is when you can kind of pull the right thread in it. And I know you talk about the androgyne in relation to like these cycles of destruction. Obviously it's like everything mirrors itself, doesn't it, in these resets and this union of male and female. Obviously, like I say, it's the inversion of it, because me and Caroline were talking last night on the phone, weren't we? There's that alchemy where you have to kind of balance the masculine and feminine within, and then say you meet your other half in this hellhole, then it's for you to, the woman's womb is a portal, and again they've hidden all this stuff from us, and they've removed the feminine from the Trinity, and they've removed the feminine, hence why they're having these, growing babies in test tubes and fake wombs, and making men into women and women into men, because they that's what they do. They invert what is natural. It's called the Christos frequency, which is nature, the creator, etc. And then they're set out to invert that, aren't they? I get why people don't want to look at it, but I found for a while, once I did look at it, I couldn't stop looking at it. And then once you kind of, and you can get a bit obsessive about it, I'd say, perhaps, but I think if they're on that world stage, they are all in on it. And people, I think somebody put up a meme the other day saying, if you're good looking and you've come up through those channels, I mean, these children are groomed for these positions.
Yeah.
We know that. And if you're ugly, you become a politician. But if you're good looking, you become an actor. And it's picked like that. It sounds crazy, but we know that that's what is occurring, isn't it?
After a while, I started to just. It was just after I did get a little bit obsessed with it for a bit, just out of fascination and studying their faces, and then I just lost interest in it. But now I've just noticed that I can just look at someone and instantly see it now. I don't even have to analyze anything anymore. It's like I can straight away just see it. And a good example of that is actually, Florence and the Machine.
Oh, I saw that one.
Yeah, and I hadn't looked at her for a while. It just happened that I was thinking about the lyrics of the song the other day, because the song "The Dog Days Are Over." Yeah,
I love that song as well,
the lyrics
but
of that song are, "The dog days are over, the dog days are done. Can you hear the horses? Well, you better run. Run fast for your brother, run fast for your sister and brother, whatever. Leave all your loving behind. You can't carry it with you if you want to survive." And then it talks about being struck from a great height. So I think it's talking about the plasma event or Sirius return or something like that. The dog days are over. I've just gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the point was, when I went to look that up to read the lyrics, I looked at Florence, and the first thing that hit me just straight in the face. I mean, maybe it's an obvious example, but that is definitely a man. Like, there's no question. And the voice, like you're saying about Mariah Carey, is seriously like feminine, isn't it? But it's
Whitney
like,
Houston as well, isn't it? And honestly, every song you pretty much hear out there is a dude, as a woman.
Well,
Time after time after time.
Yeah, well, like Axl Rose and even Chris Cornell, some of these males with these really, really broad ranges too. But to me, that's all old hat, right? It's so easy and so obvious to me at this point that it's old hat. And I could sit here and talk about it forever too, but I'm more interested in the other stuff. I made vids on that. One of them got pulled down by YouTube and I got banned for a week, which is actually, I ended up moving to Patreon and started uploading videos to BitChute and started uploading videos to Rumble, and built a little Patreon. And I was blown away by the support that I got immediately based off my YouTube, in the couple days that I've started this, since I can't post new videos on YouTube. So, but I want to talk about, I call them Muppet Puppet Troons, is what I call them. Muppet Puppet Troons, because some of them look like Muppet babies, like plastic faces, and they're almost like cartoons, and they're trans, so Muppet Puppet, and they're puppets, so Muppet Puppet Troons, I call them. And I'm kind of over that. But when you were talking about the removing the divine feminine, right? I agree with you 100%, and I think that they needed to get that first. Because that removes a lot of intuition and care and love and nurturing. that is needed for them to go to their next step, which is also removing masculinity, right? So they want us to all be infertile androgyne moo-moos that can't reproduce. We're on track to be infertile by 2050 or 2040 or something, men are, right? And if you read the book Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, it talks about this. It talks about them creating a society that is like androgyne and can't breed, right? And there's this elite class that can breed. And before long, they're going to be selling the rights to breed because the people will be infertile. And they're going to be, before long, they'll start charging for air even, right? We'll get charged to breathe before this is all over, just like they're selling
Oh,
this
they
water.
are, aren't they?
You know?
Over here, anyway, we've got clean air zones. So if you kind of drive into any kind of big city, you get charged. You know, you're not allowed. You know, like we are the
Crazy.
carbon that they want to
Yeah.
reduce, right? You know?
Yeah, and then 15-minute cities, credit scores,
Yeah,
all of it. You know, but I don't want to get hung up on that because I think that if we awaken everybody to our true power and nature, that maybe that stuff won't happen. Maybe something will happen before that will, you know, like I think that there
yeah,
is a collective awakening happening. You know, over the past 5 years, I've seen it growing. Like more people are just putting pieces together, and everybody has their own unique piece. And when people like you and me come together, we connect dots for each other and for a lot of people. And
yeah,
one other thing I want to say is about the trans stuff is Hermes and Aphrodite, right? Hermaphrodite, and
yeah,
that's like Venus. That's Venus and Mercury. So just something to
yeah.
chew on. And then when you talk about the balancing of like the Christos, right? When I think about Christos, like my YouTube channel is called Orpheus Christos
Mm.
because Orpheus calmed beasts with music, right? He didn't use violence; he used music. And Christos to me is like crystal
Yeah.
clear, like divine light, like gnosis, right? Yeah, third
Mm.
eye pineal gland, like in tune with the
Still.
akashic field, the etheric field, the plasma intelligence, the sentient plasma, and ultimately, I think the plasma is sentient. But if you draw a line, right, alignment, and then draw a serpent energy or a wave through it, it creates the money sign, and
Yeah.
it's current. You see the
Mm.
currency, right? And um, it's just crazy how much this is encoded. Like English language is almost like a spell, right? And I want to talk a little bit more about the blue and red stuff. You were talking about that earlier. Well, those are the polarized uh, light, like polarities, right? So blue flame is the hottest flame. Red is the coolest flame. So they're polar. They're polarities of each other. And what
Yeah.
do? They separate the politics into red and blue parties, and they polarize us at the polls with politics,
Mm.
and they use politicians to do it. They create pull, right? And so it's all a big show, and it's encoded in the language, and it's almost like spelling, right? It's a big spell with the spelling in the language, and if you don't walk right, the police will come and get you with the red and blue lights. And when red and blue, right, they make the purple, right? So it's all, there's so many layers for us to see this through. And my research, like the other gentleman you mentioned, Neil, has led me to the tribe of Dan, definitely. Like I'm on that trail, but I want to check his stuff out. I've also kind of connected through listening to other people, like Iberians. Like Iberians,
Mm.
the Iberian word to the word Hebrew. So I wanted to mention that. A couple notes of things that I forgot to answer that you asked earlier. Van Halen, you asked about Van Halen, and then we brushed over it because I
Yeah.
got on a tangent about something else. But yeah, so Van, that's like vanity, right? The fair ones, the Venetians, right? The V, the PH, the F, it's all the same. And then
Yeah.
Halen, yeah, it's like they're hailing uh, this energy or this star to come back or something, the fallen ones, right? And even like their songs, like Running with the Devil, right? And the other thing is Led Zeppelin, right? Led Zeppelin, lead is like the heaviest element or the most dense, right? And if you put lead in a Zeppelin, it ain't gonna float, right? So it's like it's something meant to be in the air or ascended, but it's not. It's a fallen angel, right? And even
Yeah.
their album and Van Halen's both have that symbology. One of the Van Halen's, it's got a little cherubim, which is like a seraphim. Seraphim means flaming serpent, fiery serpent, which is the plasma snakes, the plasma dragons. And they have a cherubim or a little angel baby with wings smoking a cigarette. And that's like Lucifer. That's the torchbearer. That's the Statue of Liberty. That's Helios. That's St. Lucifer, right? The light bearer, the Helios, the halo, the corona, the crown, the coronal discharge, right? From this event. And so it's encoded in the names of these bands, in all of their songs, like what is it by Led Zeppelin? Kashmir, where they talk about as the sun burns the ground and everything I see turns to brown, and he sits with elders of a gentle race, and talks of times to be revealed that seldom, whatever, it's all about this. It's all about this. And the thing you mentioned too about like the word Jesus, right? I wanted to talk about a few more things about that, right? In French, it's Jesus, which means I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are we all like meant to understand that story, whether it was a real person or not, or whether it's encoding this event that I'm talking about, like the morning star, the swatter man, every eye will see him in the clouds, right? And we can talk about Revelation 1:12 later. I'd like to do that. But are we all supposed to just embody that energy where we sacrifice ourselves in a way, right? We kill who we thought we were, our former identities, to constantly evolve on this path of killing ourselves, sacrificing ourselves to help enlighten our brothers and sisters, right? And we're all this divine fractal source inside of us, the spark. It's all a fractal of God, and we're just wearing these flesh, meat, mech, bio monkey suits, right? And I think that the plasma is sentient. And there are people here that are like, maybe think there is no evil, and bring upon destruction because everything's in cycles, and if it can be perverted, it's meant to be perverted, and do as thou will. But I don't know. I would rather follow the right hand path, but also blend the two to make the gray, right? The black and the white, like you were talking about. You got to have a little of both and realize that one can't exist without the other, because like Alan Watts talks about, like if you have a black background, if you don't have anything on that background, there's nothing there. There's no contrast. There's nothing there. So there has to be friction for anything to exist and for us to grow, right? As souls, right? And to evolve. And furthermore, with the Jesus etymology, right? So the Egyptian god who holds up the sky, much like Atlas does, like the squatter man, it's Atlas, it's Shiva, but it's also Shu, the Egyptian god Shu. Now, what do they call gods? Jah or Yah, right? Joshua, right? Yashu. And then Shiva. There's a song called, or a phrase in Hindu called, it says Jai Shiva, Hail Shiva, Jai Shiva. The V and the U are interchangeable. Joshua, Jai Shiva, Joshua, Yashua, Jeshua. It's just crazy how many connections there are when you go down that path. So those were just a few things that you had touched on earlier that I wanted to, I had like make notes because I want to touch on everything. And the last thing you talked about was timelines, right? This fairy tale timeline that we're given. There are a couple people. One is Anatoly Fomenko, I think his name is, where he presents this like new timeline where and there's somebody else I can't think. Gunnar Heinzholm. Gunnar, it just came to me. Gunnar Heinzholm. He talks about analyzing stratigraphic geology, I think is how you pronounce it, or stratigraphic, the layers, and proving without a doubt that all of our stories that they tell us that seem like, wow, why was there this guy king and this, and then 600 years before that there was a king by the same name. It seems like all these stories are recycled. Why was there Plato 1 and a Plato 2, or what, just I don't know the specifics, but basically stuff like that these guys analyze along with geological layers, and they prove that either between 700 and 1,000 years have been added to our timeline. And we're, so nobody knows what time it is. Like that Chicago song. Does anybody really know what time it is? Right? I don't know, but I would assume the secret would be in like some form of the Jewish or Hebrew way of tracking time before it was like everything was perverted with the Gregorian calendar. And we're meant to track by the moon, because the moon is the months, right? And if you have 13 of like 29 days or whatever, it comes out to 365 with 1 day left over or something. It's like the ancients used the moon, and there's 13 and 29 encoded on a turtle's back too. So it's the turtle shell and the moon cycle, all of that's connected to all of this. And they just obscure our sense of time, and there's definitely like 700 to 1,000 years minimum added to our timeline, and stories that have been recycled 2-3 times. So I just wanted to add that. So back to you.
Yeah. Well, history has a way of repeating itself, doesn't it? And it's definitely, I think, goes in cycles. I mean, in the Law of One, they call the harvest of souls. I think it's a 25, it might be 24, 25,000 year harvest of and cycle of souls, which fits in with what we were saying before. I think, I mean, when we were talking about what is this place, I mean, I don't think we can ever really know until we do, right? Until there is perhaps that collective click and ascension. And they say, it's like the monkey in it, the quantum monkey. Not everybody has to kind of get it, just enough of us for it to kind of tip in consciousness. I mean, they call it in the Law of One the wild card of Ra. Is that awakening possible? There's always possibility, probability. So yes, it's possible, but is it probable? I do see a shift out there to a degree, but do I see enough of one at the moment? Not really. But and again, that's why the distractions and the baubles and the bells of it are so so fierce, so vehement, aren't they? It's an absolute show. I mean, celebrity. We look at that. Hollywood celebrity culture, which I think most people have got that is just complete perversion now. The word celebrity itself means ritual, doesn't it? It's like you say, it's the language, it's spell casting. You see Taylor Swift, which is obviously a dude, right? Casting this frequency upon these young minds, and I kind of we can see what it is, and that kind of worshipping false idols, isn't it? Like pop idol, X Factor. X is such a an occult symbol as well. And this hidden knowledge, of these parasites or ruling orders, they preserve it, don't they? Again, in the crest and the flags and the logos, the eagles, the crown, the torch, the trident, the X. And it's like you say, it's this obsession with fecking telling us, really. But most people can't quite grasp it, really. But I mean, I went to a court and we're, talking about this overlay or this potential hijack of what is the true Edenic state, I believe, underneath. I think there's two things going on usually. But we were at Grimsby Court, and there was a lovely lady called Charlotte, and they do a lot of grid work. So they go up and down the country, basically trying to break that grid structure, that hijack, that overlay that is on the true kind of state of things how they should be. But it was interesting, they use structured water. So if you've got a courthouse, and obviously we know that it's to mimic a ship, but what perhaps some people don't know is they class the sewers underneath as the water that the ship's like on. So basically like ship water and all this stuff is the water that ship in maritime, and maritime means sea of time. It's always linked to time and Chronos and Saturn, etc. But they were taking this structured water when we were all there at the courts, battling to get in, but they wouldn't let us in. But that's another story. See my other podcast for details. Pouring it down the toilets in the magistrate's court itself, to release that hijack. And it's she was explaining like how we know it's about frequency, and that even like the cenotaphs, we know what war is, when really all countries are owned by the same people on paper. So who's warring with who? We know it's blood sacrifice. So my granddad fought, both my granddads fought in the war, and so many people, we know what war is, right? But they have these cenotaphs, and obviously they've got the poppy, which represents the blood and the bullets and all this, and everyone gets around with the brass bands and they all celebrate. And I always in my stomach was like, ugh. Like what they're doing. When you're away, you realise again that's such a huge energy harvest on Memorial Day, right? But she was saying that the cenotaphs, etc., actually hold the spirits of the fallen within that grid. So our ancestors, in a way, and it goes back again to our DNA, which is why there's the assault on the DNA with the jibby jabs, etc. To cut us off from source. Corona virus, crown poison, that's what it literally translates at, the crown. These poppy rituals, these remembering ceremonies are literally feeding that energy at those points every year. It's this warloosh disguised as patriotism, and it's so deep. And meeting these women and men who were going around doing that work, as we're doing the work in the courts and exposing the legal system, etc. It's like what you were saying, we've all got a little piece of the puzzle in our own way. And when you understand the legal fiction and you pull that rug and you connect those dots, the whole thing is illusory in its sense, but it's really distracting people from, I think, this stuff, which is like, I think the collective awakening, if there is one happening, is the thing that will stop the cataclysm, or the wheel of time, as I call it. What do you think, guys? We can live in hope.
Yeah.
Caroline,
Go
you were
ahead.
saying last night, weren't you? The crazier it gets, the more kind of, talking about the shadow self and integrating that darkness, hence the dark matters, takes a little dark to defeat the dark. Yeah, if you've not looked at that and integrated it, but like Caroline, you were saying, weren't you, last night, the kind of happier and the more synchronistic, awesome events are happening, kind of maybe in your life, isn't it? It's like a direct opposite. It's like parallel, but it's like paradoxical opposite. I don't know, isn't it? What do you think, Caroline?
To the dark side, to be honest with you, you've got to remember that, for all the intensity of that, it's just that we've been born into this system, this state, and we've been, in the last few years particularly, absolutely hammered by it, to a point where we've lost our awareness of the other side of things, because we're not seeing any maybe divine interventions as yet. It's easy to believe that this system is just going to crush us all and we're powerless, and these forces that want to give us prophecy all the time to believe in and think that these things are all inevitable. I mean, that's their job basically. But what I'm seeing, especially in my own life, is that there's more of me coming online, my intuition's sharper, the more authentic I am, the more I commit to that authenticity, the less power this stuff has over me, and better things happen to me. And that is, I think, applicable to everybody. It's certainly not just me. And I think the more that you give your attention and energy to that force for good, as I would just refer to it for ease of reference, is the more you are inviting that in. And it's just a case of using your free will to choose that energy instead of this energy. I do think it's to do with maybe scripted timelines even, and things happening on a certain trajectory, as they always would have. I mean, we know that there certainly seems to be a lot of scripted details to this existence that we're in, and maybe this is a trajectory where it's going to end in some huge cataclysm. But if this plasma is sentient and conscious and is going to single out the disease and darkness and just wipe it off the face of this place and send us back to some kind of Genesis situation, then bring it on. I don't have any fear about any of this anymore. I'm sweating about digital ID, sweating about any of it, because
this is now you're getting to my jam. Yeah.
I feel good. I'm good. And
I'm feeling good. I feel great. I feel the best I've felt in my whole probably existence since I was 10.
Yeah,
so
I think it is we just need to tune into that inner knowing much more, and that is where the answers are coming from, because your mind is it's not foolproof, it's fallible, it'll trip you up left, right and center, and the forces that are much more adept in that area will run rings around you if you're not careful. So just stay away from too many rabbit holes and just stick with what your gut says, because my gut said, as soon as I heard the plasma stuff, I went, that's it. I just knew. I didn't know enough detail about it, nothing technical about it, but I knew this is the thing somehow, and that's why I wanted to come on this podcast. So yeah.
Well, so one thing I've stumbled upon recently was Rupert Sheldrake and the New Science of Heaven, a book he wrote, and he's a genius. And just from listening to people's stories about encounters with orbs and stuff and how they react, and reading research about studies, like legit studies into whether plasma could be sentient and even responsible for like most UFO sightings, like now they call them UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And one of the studies found that basically I have a plasma ball, right? Actually, I'm going to turn it on right now because it's not on and I like it on. And they did a study to show that you can affect it with your intention. Basically, if you focus on where you want the plasma to go, it'll respond, but not always in alignment with your intention. So the plasma chooses who to obey and who to defy. And it all comes down to an intention and attention, right? You can call it prayer, you can call it meditation, you can call it quantum, whatever, you can call it witchy stuff. But it's all intention and attention, and really nothing's real. 99% of matter is like nothing, right? And we're all just like energy zipping around. And I think that somehow there's this who is it? There's this guy named John C. Lilly who did some studies funded by NASA where he took a bunch of LSD and tried to communicate telepathically with dolphins. And he proposed this theory that, just as an analogy, that there's like an Earth's coincidence control center. He called it ECHO, ECCO. But, you can think of it also as ECHO, ECHO, like an echo, right? And basically, like, he says and Jung kind of said the same thing, when you start noticing synchronicities, and like to acknowledge you, Carolyn, or Caroline, is it Carolyn or Caroline?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you start following your bliss and being completely authentic and just paying attention to synchronicities and like goosebump moments and like stuff like that, reality starts winking back at you. And your life becomes like this weird mirror trip. And I've been on this for like the past, I don't know, honestly, since about like September. I started noticing like some things that, like September 9th, 9/9, the portal or something. And I'm not even huge into astrology. I try to understand it the best I can, and I've got a lot to learn. It's not my area of expertise, but I'm not a dummy about it either. And then my birthday was on 10/10, right? And I turned 44, and I don't know, just things have been off the charts lately. Just with, it almost seems like the more I step into my authenticity and pursue my bliss, that I'm stepping into this vibrational or alignment that my reality is becoming resonant with what I put in the work to deserve and what I think I deserve, right? And I just have to step into it and continue to do what I'm doing and earn what is coming to me now that I've realized, wait, what the fuck? I do a lot of good, you know what I mean? And that it's just been, my point is the synchronicities and authenticity, following the bliss. It's opened up new magic for me in my life, and like manifesting things and different things like that. Just I feel like my life is about to take off. And when I tie that back into like plasma being sentient and the Earth Control Coincidence Center or whatever, ECHO, the only thing that I can make out of it is this is some kind of illusion, like the Maya, right? And it's all just energy, and it's all presenting itself to us in masks, people in different skin suits, different scenarios that are divinely orchestrated for us to either, basically to get us out of loops, you know what I mean? And to help us grow. And the same kind of energy will keep coming back into our lives in different manifestations until we learn a lesson. So the only conclusion I can come to is that, like, we're either in some kind of school or prison. Are we here because of our past life karma and we owe a debt that we have to clear before we get to escape? And, we're waking up to that and we're earning our ticket out of here. Did we voluntarily choose to come here to like bodhisattvas to like wake up all sentient beings before we exit the matrix? I don't know, but all I do know is that while there is so much like evil in the material world, when you start looking at them a non-material world and like understand plasma, which is like even now mainstream science is saying it's 99% of everything is just plasma. And it's like the fourth state of matter, but it's way more than that. And it's sentient, and it's can self-organize and show signs of intelligence and memory. And I want to link that back to star forts, right? You're talking about the water, right? Well, I think the star forts are tied into the water grid system that we had. And when you talk about structured water, that's like H320, hydrogel, living water, hexagonal, structured. It's in fruit. You can create it through doing like vortex or using frequency wands. Victor Schauberger did a lot of work on explaining how the vortex works and how magical that is. If people haven't studied Victor Schauberger, they should. But regardless of how evil and backwards and upside down and inverted and perverted this freaking While My Guitar Gently Weeps, I don't know how you were all diverted. You were perverted too by the Beatles, right? No one alerted you. You were inverted and perverted, right? And My Guitar Gently Weeps, right? So the non-material world is where it's at, and when you start tuning into things like that, and people will like bash it with new agey things, like make it sound woo, but really it's the oldest stuff. And some people do pervert it and take advantage of it and pervert it and make money off of it. But like things like frequency, that's everything vibrates, everything. And Tesla energy, everything's energy and vibration, right? Frequency, and everything is just these fractal things that the closer they look, it just gets made of smaller and smaller things. And they lie to us about atoms. It's really all just freaking balls of energy zipping around in an organized fashion. So nothing is real. And whether this is a prison planet or a karmic punishment or a choice to come here to help other people, I don't think by any means that this is my, my reward isn't here. This is part of a growth process or a school or a journey or a mission. And I'm just going to continue to sacrifice myself and in a symbolic way by being dying and reborn and constantly evolving and giving everything I have to helping people see what I see about the plasma and about the sentience and about just opening people's minds on the nature of this world and the magic and the synchronicities and the bliss and the authenticity. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, go on, Colin, Jonathan.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think for a few of us, I think I can speak for you and I, at least, Callie, anyway. This feels like some kind of mission. And I don't say that in an egotistical sense. It's just that there's this constant compulsion internally to do things a certain way. And it is based in compassion. It does have a lot of fire behind it. And I do find myself put in situations where there's a certain degree of righteousness involved, and it's not because I am some kind of like moral authority by any stretch of the imagination, but what I do find is that I seem to always land in positions where something needs realignment. That right, and that isn't through my choice, and it's actually a fucking pain in the ass like a lot of the time for me. But that doesn't seem like I am discovering things along the way. Would I say I'm learning a massive load of lessons? Not necessarily. I feel like I'm already quite centered in who I am, and that just gives me the feeling that this was potentially some kind of mission. And I do think the difference is huge if you feel that it's a mission or you feel that you're here to learn lessons, isn't it? It implies a lot of different things about what this place actually is. So I'm just feeling that we're all gravitating towards each other now more than ever. And more people are turning up in my life who have this sense of mission, who have this shared kind of drive and intelligence and like cutting perspective and things like that. And that seems like more evidence that something big is happening now. I'm not saying it's some kind of awakening. I'm just saying it's time. And we're all unifying in a way that is having a massive impact. And I just think just sticking with that is all you can do. It you can't divert from that even if you want to. You just get dragged back into it again. So yeah.
I'd have to agree as well. I think like we've said and we've touched on it briefly, for me it is all things at all times. It's it's astrotheological, it's anatomical, it's it's astrotheological. Did I just say that? But anyway, it is, and it's kind of like, is it a school? Is it a prison? I think it's both. I think we choose to come here and we don't. I don't know. Who knows? But I suppose the takeaway from this episode may be, for people to ask themselves, were these ancient, strange gods that our ancestors saw in the sky, were they supernatural beings, or were they these humanized kind of plasma events? Every culture remembers these sky myths or the sky being on fire for these apocalyptic events. But I suppose that it's still being echoed to us, isn't it, in this modern world, whatever year we're in. And I very much doubt it's 2025 through our art and our pop culture. And there's something screaming at us, whether that's our ancestors or whether that's, these parasites themselves, because they have to tell us either way. The screaming kind of the answer to us for those that have eyes to see. But I think we'll kind of leave it on that note, because we could talk. We'll have to do a part two. I mean, it's so vast, isn't it? It's so vast.
There's one more thing you've got to ask, though, Kelly. There's one more thing. And I know people will be thinking, well, when's this plasma event supposed to be happening then?
Right, yeah, of course, yeah. Good question.
the last thing we should probably.
Big help.
Okay. All right. So I'll say this. I had a conversation with the person who probably knows the most about this event as compared to any living person. He was somebody who works closely with Anthony Peratt, who I mentioned earlier with Los Alamos, and published some papers with him. I won't mention his name because some of our conversations were private, and we had a kind of a falling out. And I have a video about this on my page. And by the way, my new name on like all my other platforms is Electric Gnosis. So Gnosis, Electric Gnosis. Kind of a rebrand because it's hard for people to spell Orpheus Christos. And when I moved from YouTube, so anyway, I'll be under both of those names, Orpheus Christos and Electric Gnosis. But I guess the way this guy kind of phrased it was that they're basically, like I said, it seems to happen approximately every 13,000 years, but there's also little mini cycles within the 13,000 years where some other things happen on a more frequent basis. I know there's people, and I won't mention names, that research this event under different names that I'm not, whatever, that think it's, every 138 years, right? And that it's due in like 2040 or 2038 or something. There's some people that are saying 2026. But I will say this, based on the information from this source, he looked at electromagnetic reversal, the reversal of the magnetic field data that would be present in tree rings, and definitely found evidence of what they would call, I think it's called a Laschamp, like LASCHAMP, like La Champ event that happened like 42,000 years ago for sure. And then evidence that maybe one happened 13,000 years ago, if I remember right. And I think, I think we're due, in the grand scheme of things, if this is tied to like a 26,000 year cycle, which may be even part of a larger cycle, if you start looking at the Mayan stuff and the Aztec calendar and all that, the Mayan calendar, the way it's like a wheel within a wheel and like a gear, right? But within this cycle, even if it's every 13,000 years, even if it's that infrequent, which I think it's more frequent than that, but I don't know how frequent, I think we're very due for it. And relatively speaking, that would be soon. Now, I'm more of the opinion that no man can tell the hour, and that it's part of it is a feedback loop, right? So they may be like, we couldn't rise to the heights that we're rising to. I give you two kudos for knowing as much as It takes dedication, and it takes painstaking research, and it takes just obsession almost, and it takes insane intellectual curiosity, and you guys are on that level. So, but my point is, we wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for opposition, right? If things weren't so ugly, we wouldn't have transmuted it to this much beauty. So in a way, like these events that are happening, gosh, I don't know. In a way, I'm thankful for them, and in a way, I can't help but is it necessary? Is this all scripted, like the scripture, scripted? And astrology guides everything. And when the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then love will guide the planets and peace will steal the stars. This is the dawn, right? The age of Aquarius, right? And
The dawn of Aquarius.
Aquarius. Harmony and understanding. And so is it on some kind of feedback loop where they're harvesting our loosh, and all that fear and negativity is being sent up to the conscious plasma, and it's reflecting back down to us? And can we transmute that with a collective awakening and break the spell and cause something else to happen? But ultimately, I think when it does happen, I do think whether you want to just view it as neon idols of plasma in the sky and just its lights, you could maybe think that way. Or if you also wanted to think it's conscious, and it could be like the source of genies and gods and spirits, and that there is some kind of sentience, and it's linked to your vibration and your resonance and your harmony and what you deserve, right? And if you've been a bad little boy, maybe when this event happens, you're going to be terrified and it's going to come after you, right? In Revelation, it says that there's going to be scorpions coming from the sky, or locusts actually, locusts coming from the sky that are given power to sting like scorpions. But it won't kill men, and it won't harm any green thing or living thing on the earth. It will only punish wicked men, and their pain will last for 5 months of torment. It won't kill them. Now, if your bioelectric field, if it got a sudden zap from something, right, that could cause disturbance, and that could last for up to 5 months of like ill health effects. So could it be that when this event happens, everybody's going to get their own unique experience based on what they deserve, right? And like the Hopi, right? My message is not a message of fear, right? The Hopi talk about the pure of heart in their clans were led by wingless craft or wingless shields, flying wingless shields, stars, and strange clouds to this godlike figure called Satkunang or Sokutang or something, Satkunang or something. And then he led them to these underground people called the ant people, right? And we talk about these bunkers, right? And these underground people that survive, maybe there's a benevolent group and it's somehow the plasma guides people to them through like orbs and stuff and stars and clouds and weird things in the sky, UAPs. And the Hopi say that they taught them how to grow food and store food down there. And the Hopi still celebrate the Bean Festival to this day to honor these ant people who maybe because they lived underground, they were called the ant people. I have other theories about that too, but we'll keep it short. So my message is not a message of fear. And I do think that when it happens, everybody's going to get their own unique experience based on what they deserve.
Me too.
So can I be on a yacht in the south of France, like drinking some champers? That would go down very well with me. But yeah, well, and on that note, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I mean, it is about us all kind of breaking the spell, isn't it? Cracking the code, removing the veil, understanding the nature of existence and time. 2020 with the pandemic was our 2020 vision, was it not? And only a child can enter the kingdom of heaven. So I think we've got to kind of, you've got to untie the knots that they've tied into us, remove the background programs, keep doing the inner work and the shadow work. Yeah, man. And obviously stay tuned to Dark Matters and your life will just get better and better. So a great thank you to Joshua. That was amazing. I knew that it would be. You've filled my head with a lot of things to think about this evening, which I will do over a beer. Caroline, as ever, awesome stuff. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And if you ever want to do a part 2, I'm always willing to come. I've had a blast here. It was an honor chatting with you two and getting to know you better and seeing how much you see too. And I think this could really help a lot of people connect a lot of dots because so many bases are covered and tied in all in one kind of little thing, So, man, thank you so much. I'm honored and humbled. It was great.
Awesome. Us too. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Food for thought. See you next time.